So now that we know how to determine how much a firm should produce given the marginal revenue, which in a perfectly competitive market is the same as the price, and their marginal costs, nice easy decision where we don't need all the rest of the stuff on the graph. We just need these two curves. This is the quantity you produce. You maximize your profits here. Or, well, maximizing profits can sometimes mean minimizing losses. I alluded to that before. Well, now I'm going to explain what I mean about minimizing losses. We're looking at firms that operate in highly competitive markets, and we're assuming that they're going to end up selling at a price and producing a certain quantity associated with that optimal production decision, and they're going to sell everything and everything's going to be great. But remember, this is a highly competitive market. Perfectly competitive markets are highly competitive, and I've been saying that when we have the price equals marginal cost equals average total cost situation, that's the long run equilibrium. In the short run, it might not be so neat. In the short run, a firm can make positive economic profit. Remember, we define normal profit as zero economic profit. In the short run, you can make positive economic profit in a perfectly competitive market, and you can lose money as well. So what we're going to look at now is how we can determine on a graph if a price is high enough for the firm to make money and lose money, and importantly, should the firm even produce at all if they're losing money, and when should they shut down? So we're familiar with this picture, and we're familiar with this picture. This is this graph with the other curves thrown in. Price is equal to average total cost right here, and everything's great. Now, the previous graph was based on, well, the price that we found here was based on the market. Remember, in perfectly competitive markets, you are a price taker. This market price is determined by all the consumers and their various maximum willingnesses to pay, and all of your competitors and their various minimum willingnesses to sell. And this equilibrium price emerges as people down here say they're not going to participate in the market at a price down here, and on the supply side they're saying, well, I don't want to sell it to you anyway, so you're not breaking my heart by not buying from me. Meanwhile, people up here are willing to pay higher prices, and on the supply side people are willing to sell at higher prices, but they still want to get a sale that's going to be beneficial for them as well, even if they have to drop the price. Those dynamics, which we've gone over at the beginning of the semester, give us an equilibrium right here where the quantity supplied and the quantity demanded at this price are equal. All output is sold, and we have a market price that emerges from this. And every perfectly competitive firm has to charge that price. And once their marginal cost curve comes equal to that price, which is their marginal revenue in a perfectly competitive market, they're going to stop. And that's what they're going to produce, and they're going to sell it, and that'll be that. But what we don't know from this scenario is this firm making money? Or are they breaking even? Or are they losing money? Is this price consistent with positive profits? It's consistent with profit maximization at this quantity, because this quantity is where price equals marginal cost. But are they making money or not? Well, we don't know how to answer that yet, but let's assume that they're not. They're at the break-even point. This is a long-run equilibrium. Zero economic profit is being earned. That's normal profit. And remember, that means positive accounting profit. It's just after opportunity costs and everything else, you're break-even, so you're willing to stay in business just barely. Price drops a little bit, not so much anymore, but for right now, you're doing great. You're cruising along. You're happy. You're successful. Whatever. Now, what happens before getting to the shutdown price, just to see how to determine profits and losses from the graph? What happens if this demand curve shifts to the right? A bunch of people move into town and they want the same good or service, and so quantities demanded in the entire market have gone up, and you can sell all of your output at a higher price on the supply side. or taste and preferences, or for whatever reason. There are a lot of reasons why a demand curve will shift to the right, and something like that happens. So the demand curve shifts to the right. This is the old demand curve, and this is the new demand curve. Supply curve hasn't changed. Supply hasn't changed, but quantity supplied sure has. The price went up, and the quantity supplied went up. So looking over here, the optimal production amount was here, but the price went up, so now the optimal production amount for every firm, if this is the typical firm, is a little higher. You're going to sell more and you're going to make more, and that's going to be true for the entire market. So if we were assuming that this firm was breaking even right here, this was break even. Well, now they're making more, and yes, their marginal costs are rising, but their marginal revenues are higher too. And along this portion of the curve, everything this firm makes up to this point, they're making more money on each sale than it costs them to make it. And they're stopping right here when their marginal costs are at the point where they can no longer make extra money. But they're making more money in this case. Higher prices that go up along this marginal cost curve, and then it all stops right here. So to see that they're making a profit, this is just zooming in on the different quantities. Quantity goes up here. You add in the other cost curves. Notice we had a price and marginal revenue line that cut through this point right here. At the point where marginal cost, marginal revenue, price, and average total cost were all equal. That is that long-run equilibrium, and we're going to see why in the long run this is where the market will go to in a perfectly competitive market. And that is the place where the firm isn't earning any positive or negative economic profit. It's break even. Why is that? And what does it have to do with this average total cost curve? Well, their average sale, this is a marginal cost. This is ignoring all your costs before and all your costs after and just looking at the jump from one unit to the next. That next unit of production is going to be this much more costly. Meanwhile, average total cost doesn't ignore everything. It takes every unit you produced and the cost for each of those units, and it's all in there. The total cost divided by the number of units, spread out over that number of units. Your total cost divided by quantity, that's your average total cost. So the average cost for everything that you produced and sold, if that's the same as the price at which you sold them all, that's going to be break even for you. Remember, we're incorporating opportunity costs into this average total cost curve. But if you look at your marginal revenues and your price and you see that it's way up here, it's above your average total cost. Go over here to your optimal production amount, it's still above average total cost. The average cost, all the money that you spent to make this particular quantity divided by your quantity is right here. But the price you sold each unit for is higher than that average total cost. So you are making positive economic profit, and that is shown here. Your total economic profit, every quantity, and then the difference between the average total cost line and the price line here, that's going to be the total amount of money that you're making. You are making positive economic profit. You're making money. Congratulations and nice work. Although you didn't have that much to do with it. You kept your costs down, but the market determined this price for you, but you recognized it and you sold at that price and sold at this optimal quantity and positive profits. That's great. That's terrific. Not going to last in the long run, and we'll see why, but for now, this is great. Well, now let's see what happens if the price is down here. I think you can already tell now it's costing you on average this much to make each unit, but you can only sell it for this much. Naturally, you're going to lose money. This is an economic loss. You're operating at a loss. The prices you're getting in for each unit are below your average cost for producing at that level. So you're losing money. So you should probably just not even run your business, right? Well, if the price doesn't recover in the long run, you are going to shut down. But in the short run, you may or may not shut down if you're losing money. Let's compare this to a more extreme situation where you have a really low price way, way, way down here. Now you have an even bigger loss. Now, obviously, if you're going to compare the two, the bigger loss is where you want to stop producing. But why don't you stop producing up here as well? This gives us a little bit more of a complete picture. And this is where the average variable cost is in. You may have noticed we took out that average fixed cost down here. That's relevant for economies of scale. But the average variable cost, we kept this curve in here. And we did that for a reason. And that was so that we can determine whether we're going to shut down in the short run or not. In the long run, if prices don't recover, you're going to shut down anyway. But in the short run, you may want to stay open. The reason for that, this is the cutoff point at average variable cost. Your fixed costs, you're going to pay them anyway. In the short run, you have fixed costs. You need to generate some money to pay them. So producing something and selling it will give you the money you need to pay rent for the space you're operating out of, or to pay down your loan for the capital equipment you took out, or whatever. You generate that money by producing and then selling, but producing also has an average variable cost with it. So the shutdown point it aligns with the average variable cost curve here, because if the price is up here, let's go back to that slide where the price was up here. It's above your average total. This is your optimal. The price equals marginal cost right here. That's your optimal production point. It's below average total cost, so you're losing money. But remember, average variable cost. Variable cost has to do with each unit of production. Those are the costs involved with that extra unit of production. Fixed costs, doesn't matter what your production levels are, you're going to pay those and they're not affected by production. But average variable cost, maybe you have to pay a certain number of employees per hour, and if you produce more, you need to pay for more hours of work. The raw materials that you use, you don't have to pay for them if you're not producing anything. You just don't buy them. But if you are producing, you have to pay for them. If those are your variable costs, and if it costs you this much to make an additional unit and you could sell it for this much, well, then you're going to make more money than you would if you shut down completely. You're still operating at a loss because when you factor in your fixed costs, your total costs, now the price is a little too low for you to be able to make a profit. But here, you're making money on each unit in terms of your average variable costs. You're making more than you would make if you shut down. If you don't produce anything, you make zero. But if you produce up to this quantity, well, your profit maximizing quantity is still here, but this is what I meant when I said the profit maximization can mean profit or loss minimization. You're losing less money here at this quantity than you are at this quantity here, where you're bringing in zero revenue. Here you're bringing in more revenue than it's costing you in terms of your variable costs to make it. So that's a little bit more money available to pay those fixed costs. So the shutdown decision, is right here. Here you can you're indifferent between staying open or not. Here you're not indifferent. You want to keep operating. Here is your break-even point. Here you're making a profit. Any price down below this one, you're not going to operate. It's going to cost you more in terms of variable costs than it is in terms of your revenues to operate, so you are better off shutting down. It's like I can pay $5 to make $1, I'm not going to do it. Pay $5 for materials to make $1. Doesn't make sense. But pay $5 to make $6 does make sense. It's just that extra dollar might not be enough to pay your rent. And then we got to head to what this marginal cost curve has to do with the short run supply curve, but we'll get into that in the next